After the death of Moses, Joshua took over as Israel's new leader. He led them in conquest of the land of Canaan, the land that God had promised Abram back in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 7. That promise is fulfilled as Joshua and a faithful generation of Israel take that land. It then becomes the land of Israel, and it's divided up amongst the tribes. Joshua then dies, and with him the faithfulness of Israel. The book of Judges describes the next several generations as a people who did that which was right in their own eyes. Judges 21 and verse 25. There is a pattern in the book of Judges of sin and idolatry, and then God raises up a nation to oppress the Israelites. They call out for deliverance, and God raises a deliverer or a savior. The Bible calls those men and women judges, the judges of Israel. You're familiar probably with many of them. Samson, Jephthah, Gideon, Deborah, to name a few. The final judge of Israel is Samuel. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, Samuel is old. He is going to pass the role of being a judge to his two sons. The problem is his two sons were not faithful to God. The text says they perverted justice. They took bribes. And so the children of Israel said, "We don't want this anymore. We want a king." In 1 Samuel 8 and verse 5, they tell Samuel, "Give us a king that we might be like all the other nations around us." Samuel goes to God and says, "What should I do?" God says, "Don't be offended, Samuel. They've not rejected you. They've rejected me as being king." It's very important for us to recognize that God viewed himself as king. Israel was a theocracy, but now they're crying out and asking for a king. God says to Samuel, "Give them a king. But tell them that if they get a king, here's what a king will do. He will take, and he will take, and he will take. He will take your sons and make them his soldiers. He will take your daughters and make them his cooks, his bakers, his perfumers. He will take your servants and make them his servants. He'll take the best of your land. He'll take the best of your livestock. He will tax you." But they said, "No, we want a king." Now God knew that they were going to ask for a king. Back in Deuteronomy chapter 17, God said, when you take the land of Canaan and you come into the land, you will ask for a king. And when you do, he must meet these three criteria. He must be a king of my choosing. He must be from among the brethren of Israel. And number three, he must keep a copy of the law and read the law and observe it carefully all the days of his life. Unfortunately, when you look at all of the kings that Israel had, not one of them measured up. Not even David, the king after God's own heart, as great as David was, as faithful as David was, he did not measure up. He was not perfect. You think of kings like Hezekiah, another good king. Josiah, perhaps the best. But Israel's history is characterized by one bad king after another. Ultimately, it would be the king of God's own choosing that would stand in stark contrast to all of the other kings of Israel. God's own son, Jesus. King Jesus, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings. I remember Pilate asking Jesus, "Are you a king?" in John 18:37. Jesus said, "I am a king. It is for this reason I was born and have come into this world." We have much more to say about kings and Israel's request for a king. This is a major turning point in the story of the Bible. We'll talk more about this next time.